Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tucker, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about some NBA news, and that is that Daryl Morey is now in charge of the front office in Philadelphia. This is a surprising bit of news to me. We talked about Daryl Morey in the past when he left the Rockets, and I told you guys that I didn't anticipate him being in an NBA job this year. I thought he would just kind of, go do some other stuff, maybe come back to the NBA next year. But now he is going to be in charge of things in Philadelphia. There's plenty of things to talk about with this, so I don't want to waste too much time before we get into it. But really quickly, before we do get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day, and a lot of times it's going to be 2 times a day as well moving forward. So if you enjoy consistent NBA content, this is a great place to be. You can also leave a like rating on the video. That helps me out because it gets out to more people on YouTube, and it lets me know that you guys are enjoying the content as well. And as always, if you want to hang out with me outside of these videos, you can do so at twitch.tv/spolo_TD. It's pretty likely that I'm live right now if you guys want to come hang out. And you can also hang out in the Discord server. We're at almost 300 people now in the Discord server. The link to that is in the description. With all that said, let's go and get started. Okay, so the Daryl Morey thing. As I said when we talked about this with the Rockets video, I'd anticipated that Daryl Morey was going to take at least a year break from the NBA and from being an NBA general manager, just because this is a guy that had put a lot into what he was doing there in Houston. He has a lot of outside interests as well. He's not just a basketball guy. And when that situation kind of fell apart, I had assumed that he would be taking a bit of a break. And this is twice now that I've been wrong about this, where with Doc Rivers, when he ended up getting fired by the Clippers, I thought, you know what, maybe he'll take a year off. Maybe he'll take a break. He'll still be, in high demand next year as a head coach. And I thought the same thing about Daryl Morey as a general manager. And that turned out not to be the case. And apparently, ever since he left the Rockets, these conversations have been ongoing between him and Philadelphia. And I guess, unbeknownst to us, this was pretty much inevitable. At some point this offseason, Daryl Morey was going to be in charge of the front office there in Philadelphia. There's a couple of interesting points here. One is that this almost happened 2 years ago when Morey kind of felt like the Rocket stuff was starting to go downhill. The Sixers came to him and were like, hey, we've got a situation here where we want to really figure out what we're doing in the front office. We feel like someone with your experience level could really help us do that. Do you want to come run stuff here in Philly? And he was apparently really, really close to leaving Houston at that point, was convinced to stay by, ownership and otherwise. But now here we are 2 years later, and he's going to be running things in Philadelphia. Now, apparently Elton Brand is still staying in his general manager capacity, and Daryl Morey has some kind of title that is over the top of that, and he is running things completely. The final word on everything runs through Daryl Morey, which is really, really interesting considering the fit of this roster. Now, I'm going to go and get this part out of the way in the very beginning. I find it very, very unlikely that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are suddenly going to be traded now that Daryl Morey is in Philadelphia. And obviously this roster is pretty strange and pretty different compared to what Daryl Morey is typically used to, what he typically likes to build, which makes this such a strange and an interesting pairing. I like the fact that he is there, and I like the fact that Philly brought him in, just because they certainly need some help in the front office. But I also would say, and caution against and pump the brakes on thinking that all of a sudden this is going to be some huge roster shakeup outside of what was already supposed to happen in Philly this year. The front office was always going to explore trading away Al Horford, potentially trading away Tobias Harris. Those things were already going to be explored this offseason. But if you want to go beyond that now, just because Daryl Morey has been hired, I'm not going to do that personally. We've talked about this in multiple videos. The Sixers are going to give this Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid thing at least another year. They've got Doc Rivers there to try and fix this thing. Daryl Morey is going to be there and going to be trying to make the rest of the roster work around those two guys. There's no way that now that they've hired Daryl Morey with a new coach and Doc Rivers that is supposed to fix this kind of stuff, there's no way that now they're going to turn around and say, okay, bye Ben Simmons, bye Joel Embiid, even though the roster obviously isn't an ideal fit. So that's the first thing to just go ahead and get out of the way there. Now, 18 months from now, a year from now, yeah, one of those guys is probably going to be moved if things don't go well. I would say that if things don't go well with this current roster, it is now more likely, now that Daryl Morey is in charge of things in Philadelphia, it's now more likely that one of those guys gets moved at some point in the next 18 to 24 months. I will say that. That definitely the needle on that has definitely been moved with this Daryl Morey hiring. But in terms of an immediate thing, those guys aren't getting traded. NBA general managers, or whatever you want to call Daryl Morey, they don't typically show up and then immediately make huge trades like that for teams that have at least been relatively successful over the last couple of seasons. This isn't a sudden, rebuild or reset situation. I think the Sixers just wanted to raise their level of competence within the front office, and I know Sixers fans are not a huge fan of Elton Brand, and really the last couple of people they've had in charge of the front office ever since Sam Hinkie left have not been great. So it makes total sense to me to have an upgrade in the front office, and that's what Daryl Morey represents in this situation. But again, as it relates to Simmons and Embiid, I don't think that they're suddenly going to be moved. However, I am interested to see what moves Morey is going to make, because this is a guy that is known for being a very, obviously, numbers-based and analytics-based person, and I'm interested if there's a player on this roster that he's going to look at and think, they've got a good amount of value around the league compared to the value that he actually sees in them, and who he ends up moving. Because I would be shocked if we go through the entire offseason and there's not a single trade made there in Philadelphia. Like, they have to make some changes to this roster, especially now with a new general manager, whatever his title is, a new person in charge in the front office there, coming in with new ideas. I would be completely shocked if we get all the way to the start of next season and they have not moved a single player on this roster. So we'll kind of see what direction Morey wants to take this team in. I would imagine they're going to be shooting more threes and they're going to be playing a bit smaller at times if the roster allows for it. I would be really surprised if Ben Simmons doesn't shoot a career high in threes this season, although, I don't know how that would even be possible for him not to. But remember, when Morey first got to Houston, it's not like they immediately went to this small ball thing. Like when he first got there, they had Yao Ming still. They were still kind of trying to figure out and navigate that whole situation. So it's not like he's never been in a situation where the team hasn't necessarily fit what he wants to do. Now, eventually he got them there. And keep in mind, this is a guy that's made one of the best trades of the last 15 years in the NBA in the James Harden trade. So it's not like Daryl Morey doesn't know what he's doing. I know that some people aren't a huge fan, which we talked about when he left the Rockets initially. Some people just have a bit of disdain for Daryl Morey because of kind of the direction that he pushed the league. But I made that point in the previous video as well, that he's been one of the most impactful and influential figures, non-players, in the NBA in the last 10 to 15 years as well. So if I was a Sixers fan and I read this, I would be optimistic about raising the level of competence within the front office, bringing in someone that at least has experience making good trades and free agency signings and just knows what he's doing, and ideally has a clear path and a plan and a vision moving forward. I would feel much better about that. If I was someone that didn't want the Embiid Simmons thing to be broken up, I would be slightly more nervous, but not in an immediate sense. And overall, the Sixers are in a better position in terms of the competence of their front office today than they were pre the hiring of Daryl Morey. Now, Elton Brand is still going to be there. I don't necessarily stick up for Elton Brand, but I still am not, advocating for him to get canned immediately. It's tough to be an NBA general manager, and there are still, some moves to be made for this group, and still an opportunity for him to make up for some of the losses that they've had over the last couple of seasons. This has been one of the most dramatic and troubled franchises over the last couple of years from a basketball standpoint, specifically, that just have not been able to figure it out. But the other thing to keep in mind with Philadelphia, as always, is there is an incredible amount of talent individually on this roster. They still have a lot of really good pieces. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they made the conference finals next year, if they figured out this roster. And there's a lot of different ways this could go, man. If you want to tell me 18 months from now, Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid has been traded to a different team and the Sixers are looking to completely change things, I would believe you. If you want to tell me 18 months from now that they made the conference finals or maybe even the finals and they look positioned to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference for the next 7 years, I would believe you on that too. There's a lot of variation in where this team could go moving forward. And as it relates to Daryl Morey, I think you can feel more confident that they're going to make the correct decisions moving forward from a front office standpoint than you were pre the hiring of Morey. So I think it's a great move for Philadelphia. I think it's a pretty good move for Morey, as long as he doesn't go in guns blazing and try and tear everything down and trade everything to the way that he wants it to be. As long as he kind of pumps the brakes on that, comes in there and shows some patience, which I would imagine he would, I think that he's going to do a pretty good job there in Philadelphia, and it's going to be a nice combination of not only that franchise, but also the expertise that Morey brings alongside him. It's something that they've had mutual interest in for 2 years. They've been talking about this ever since Morey left Houston, and now they made it happen. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.